ZeBirdBrain, and today we are talking about rigging. So more specifically, we're going to talk about locking parameters inside a peg, okay? So I do have a little explanation to do before, so bear with me, but this is where the tutorial will go. We're going to learn how to lock some of your peg's parameter to make your animation a bit easier. So do you remember in one of my previous videos, I taught you how to take a shape under one deformer, like I have here for this little snake's body. I show you how to have one shape and be able to kind of make it go in front and behind another shape. So this crown is not in two pieces, it's just one layer that is a crown. But my snake is going through it with what seems like to be one drawing. So if you watch that tutorial, that's going to be in the description below, you're going to see that it's actually a lie. It is two drawings, but under the same deformer. So if I take this and I push it a bit too far, you're going to see the trick. So it's actually that I took my drawing, I split it in two, and now I have one half of the snake here and the other half of the snake right here. But remember, like everyone always say, it's kind of a rule. Don't put pegs under a deformer. Because, as we know, then if I take the deformer and I move it, we're bound to have a bad time. So when you put like multiple drawings under a deformer with pegs, you know that you cannot move them unless if you have a kinematic output like I have here for the head. If you have two pegs with drawings under a deformer, usually, the only reason why you want that is to be able to play in Z-depth with the two drawings. So that's exactly how I'm able to move that little snake around and have it be in front and behind the crown. So it means that this half of the drawing appears on front of the crown and this part is behind. How am I able to obtain that? It's because I have these two pegs, and these two pegs, the only thing I'm doing with them is I'm moving them in Z-space. And Z-space is okay if you have them under a deformer. So I'm gonna take this peg and I'm gonna reset it to 0 by just pressing R, and it's going to go behind the crown, and now it's going to behave like a normal drawing. But then it's because I split my body in two, I now have this part that I can click on, and if I press Alt and the downward arrow, I'm able to bring that piece towards me. So I select my peg, go in my camera view, press on Alt and the down arrow, and I'm gonna bring that thing towards me. The amount in which you translate that piece in front of you is so minimal that it doesn't bother the deformer whatsoever, and it's totally fine. And you know, when it's in my rig, I just know better not to move the peg. But there is a way to lock a peg's property, and this is what we're gonna learn today. So one of the big difference between 3D rigs and 2D rigs is that in 3D rigs, you actually have a puppet that you can like spin around and manipulate and stuff. So that's why IKFK and locking parameters and referencing is all possible in 3D, because you have an actual thing that you move in an actual 3D space. In 2D, it's a bit more different. So it's harder to have these IKFK, these lock parameters and stuff, because if we want to have foreshortening, we're not literally taking like an arm and putting it in front of the camera. We're going to redraw it or deform it so that it looks like it's 3D, but it's not. Like 2D is a lie. So because 2D requires so much like cheating around and like being very crafty about how we draw, and it's very up to like the artistic fiber, like how you draw the thing that you make it look 3D, because you know it's 2D. So this is why locking parameters and having IKFK is a bit harder to do in any 2D software. However, in some cases, like the thing I'm explaining you now with the pegs, sometimes you actually really don't want to do something with a peg. So maybe you don't want to rotate it. You really don't want to translate it. So today what I'm going to show you is how to lock a parameter within a peg. Then again, don't start to put that everywhere in your rig, because then people are gonna think that if they can't move a piece, maybe it's because they broke the rig or something. So, and animators could start to find that annoying, because if you prevent them from like translating or moving pegs around, sometimes they cannot cheat and they cannot like create something super artistic or whatever. So sometimes it's better to just let it loose, but sometimes, like what I'm gonna show you now, it's very positive to lock some parameters of a peg. So let's learn how to lock parameters together. You're gonna see the explanation was longer than how to do it. It's really simple. So to lock a peg, what we're gonna need to do is go inside its properties, and then let me just reset everything to local just so that I can show you. What we're gonna need to do is go in our parameters, and in expressions, we're gonna give them an expression that says 0. So we're gonna lock that parameter in place. So to write an expression, you have to go into your X sheet. The X sheet can be found by the plus sign, getting X sheet. And then you go to the burger menu, and you go to column, add column. You should get that little window, and then into the type of column, you're gonna go and find expression. You know, expressions are usually pretty complicated. People are scared of them because, you know, it's more for like After Effects and crazy compositing and writing codes and whatnot, but it can also be very simple, and what we're gonna do today is very simple. So So our expression, we're gonna give it a name. I'm gonna call that position 0, just so that I remember that that's what it does. And then I'm gonna press add and close. And then in your X sheet, somewhere you're gonna find your expression. So mine is pos 0. And then to write your expression, you double click here and you write what your code is. So you know, expressions usually it's a bit more complex. Today what we're gonna do is just write 0. And that's it. And then you close it. And then you go in your peg. I'm also going to just make a new peg so we're sure that we're starting fresh. I'm gonna go inside my properties. And then to lock whichever parameter you want to lock. So in my case, I want to lock the X and Y position. So I'm gonna go into the arrow here and I'm gonna find expression. And then voila, you have your position 0 expression. And when you click on this, it will mean that the position of your X axis is always gonna be 0. And then I'm gonna do the same for my Y. I'm gonna go to the expression column, peg, and position 0. Yeah, for the other ones, you kind of have to take a longer way, but it's the same. So you're still gonna find the same expression, and it's okay. So that means that now with that peg, if I take my transform tool and I try to move it, it's not gonna work. It stays, like the artwork stays in place. Okay? So anything that you want to lock, you do that. So I'm also gonna lock my scale by doing the same thing. Whichever you take doesn't matter, it's always the same expression anyway. So then the other thing I'm gonna lock is my rotation. So I'm gonna go here, get my arrow, go to expression, peg, and then you can just find whichever, it's the same so it doesn't matter. Which means that now this peg can only be moved in Z-axis. So it prevents, you know, little manipulation from failing, or if you don't trust your animation team to not make mistake, then you can also do that. But if I take my Alt and down arrow, I can still move it in Z space. The only thing I locked are the other parameter. And that's it. So that's how you lock a parameter of a peg. If in your scene you ever need to get rid maybe of the deformer, or you want to be able to move the X and Y, to get rid of your expression, it's super simple. All you have to do is go here and set it back to local, and then it's going to get rid of your expression. Alright, so I hope you had fun and that this is going to be useful. Use it wisely, don't abuse of that feature, and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye!